I think we can call the meeting to order. In about 1 second, I'm going to ask the clerk to call the roll. I want to start by welcoming our newest member, Niranjana, who is joining us for the first time. She, as some of you guys may be aware, Quasi had to resign from the committee because of the press of other business, and Niranjana was scheduled to come on starting her term right after town meeting, but she agreed to start with a little term zero and be here for the next couple of months. And thank you. That's appreciated. So now I will, hey Paul, now I will turn it over to Carlin and ask her to call the roll.
Okay, this is the roll call. Suresh Bhatia.
Present.
You're online, good. Peggy Briggs.
Here.
Brian Conway.
Present.
You're online. Kathy Kukalo.
Here.
Online. Eric Dahlberg.
Here.
John Garofalo.
Here.
Pat Geyer.
Here.
Gerard Jansen.
Here.
Don Kupka.
Here.
Lindsay Liss.
Here.
Naranja Nagarajan.
Here.
Carlin Reed here. Paul Rodriguez.
Here.
Sri Tupel. Lois Wasoff.
Here.
We have a quorum.
So we're going to begin, as we always do, by allowing 10 minutes for public comment. As is our usual practice, public comment is limited to 10 minutes, with no more than 2 minutes allotted to any one speaker, and public comment is limited to items that are not on the agenda. Is there anyone from the public here in the room who would like to speak? I don't see anyone jumping up. Is there anyone online? Ryan, do you see any hands?
Not seeing any hands.
Okay, then we will move on. The next item is correspondence. That'll be quick. There wasn't any. So now let's move on to the meeting minutes. We have the minutes of the public hearing and meeting held on March 12th. The minutes for March 10th will be on our agenda for our April 16th Finance Committee meeting. So has everyone, they were in the packet. Any comments, corrections, concerns?
Could I move that they be accepted as presented?
Is there a second?
Lindsay was second?
Oh, no, Pat was second.
Okay, thank you.
I appreciate the clerk moving her own minutes, which are incredibly timely. Always appreciated.
Thank you, Peggy. Okay, Carlin and Lindsay, second?
No, Pat second.
Pat was second, sorry about that. Pat second. Okay, we ready to do roll call?
I think we are.
All right, this is the roll call. This is the call for approving the minutes of March 12, 2026, as presented in the packet. I'm sorry?
March 10th?
My part, no, this is March 12.
March 12th. We don't have the March 10th minutes ready
Sorry.
yet.
We're just doing March 12.
I see.
My apologies, I'm not quite that efficient, but I'm working on it. Okay, so March 12. This is for approval of the minutes as presented for March 12. Suresh Bhatia,
Present.
do you approve the minutes as presented?
I wasn't at the meeting, so I'm just gonna vote present only.
How about if you vote as abstain? How does that sound?
Abstain. Okay.
Peggy Briggs,
Approve.
Brian Conway,
Approved.
Kathy Kukalo,
Yes.
Eric Dahlberg,
I was absent, so I'll abstain.
John Garofalo.
Yes.
Pat Geyer.
Yes.
Gerard Jansen.
Yes.
Don Kupka.
Yes.
Lindsay Liss.
Yes.
Naranja Nagarajan.
Abstain.
Carlin Reed, yes. Paul Rodriguez.
Yes.
And Lois Wasoff.
Yes.
Okay, Pat, double check me on this. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 yes. 0 no, and 1, 2, 3 abstention. Is that what you have?
Yeah.
All right, the motion passes. Thank you very much.
The next item on our agenda is to review the draft report that was circulated prior to the meeting. I think we can put it up on the screen where some comments were provided to Carlin in advance of the meeting, so we can kind of pick those up as we go. This is our last shot at this. I just want to put this in context. Carlin, of course, was ahead of the curve and was working on a draft of this for quite a while. We've circulated, Carlin and I worked on it closely with Jennifer and Ryan to make sure that the numbers were appropriate. Then it was circulated to a review, a couple of people on the committee who'd been asked to give it an initial review. So we received, it was circulated to Peggy, to Don, to Lindsay, and to Eric, and I don't think I'm leaving, and to Paul. So a number of you saw it in its immediately prior draft. The comments from that group of reviewers were incorporated before the draft was shared with the larger committee. So it's been around the block a few times. But if people have thoughts or comments, this is the moment to be heard. So, Carlin, how do you want to do this?
Well, there's one change from what I circulated to you, and that is the pie chart has been replaced with a bar chart. And I'm wondering if Ryan and Jennifer can show the bar chart. This is about the Town of Concord proposed fiscal year 2027 budget. It's on page 12 of the document. So instead of the pie chart, which several of the reviewers said, that's
Words or substance, yes.
That's a technical term here from Finance Committee. We have this bar chart that we're going to substitute for it, and I wanted to see what the committee thought about it as far as the format.
I have a comment on it, because I only saw it just in the last day or so. I think that the bar chart works really well for this purpose. I would like there to be some text added, maybe under the title, that gives the total amount of the budget right here as part of the chart, so people understand what those lines are part of, rather than having to do their manual addition to figure out the total.
Right.
Other than that, and the idea is to give town citizens a sense of where their money is going. And in past years, we'd used the pie chart. We also years ago had a dollar bill where we showed where each dollar of tax money was going. That was always a melodrama to create. But this, I think, accomplishes the same goal in a way that's, graphically more accessible. So I'm comfortable with it.
Okay.
Does anybody else have a question or a problem with the presentation of it? The information is the information.
Yeah, it's just the way,
Just the way we're presenting it to the town.
All right, it looks like the bar chart is a winner, so let's make that part of it. I know that Gerard had sent me a whole bunch of edits, and Peggy has a couple questions. Go ahead. Peggy, why don't you go first?
You're gonna go town and CPS debt service, and then you have tier 1 capital outlay. Should we match those? Are they both tier 1, or one is tier 2?
The debt service is what's currently on the books already. Tier 1 is what's proposed in Article 11.
So maybe that should be clear that it's proposed.
Well, the title says proposed,
Oh, okay.
because isn't it all?
Right.
The
It's all-
whole
it's all
thing is
proposed,
proposed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We could maybe add a note,
Article
Article
11.
11. I mean, OPEB is also the others all have different articles as well.
Yeah.
I mean, I think maybe a note, just highlighting that this includes other articles, because the more information you try to put on each column, it dilutes the whole purpose.
Right.
Yeah, that's true.
And the title is proposed fiscal year, so.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Of course, that's just my opinion, but
Right. This is everything for raise and appropriate.
Mhm.
Okay, well, this is kind of an important chart because it summarizes the town budget. Now, I know Gerard had a couple of, you had some small nits that you gave me, and I'll incorporate those, not a big deal. But look at the comments that you made, and if there are a couple of questions you had, like about impact and about a couple other things that you noted in particular. And while he's thinking about that, is there anybody else who wants to make comment? John?
I mean, besides being extremely well done and with a ton of information that the town people probably don't appreciate how hard it is to pull all together. I just had a couple questions on the phrasing and if this is appropriate here. So page 4, we say these internal control procedures have been addressed related to the audit. Are we 100% confident that everything has been addressed and will not recur going forward?
We've been given assurances by the town that they have been. Is there a text change you'd like to see? Or,
Nope, not at all. We're just making a
Okay.
blanket statement, and I just want to make sure that the committee feels like everything
okay,
is appropriately addressed.
sure, okay.
Don, go ahead.
Yep, on that, Lois, I was wondering if you want to reference the financial audit advisory committee, since it's not necessarily representing that we've said that they've been addressed, but that this is coming to us from the town.
You know, it's an interesting point. I thought about including some language in there about that. I didn't want it to look like we're passing the buck, but it is, in fact, an accurate statement that the actual responsibility for supervising the preparation and the delivery of the audit is with that other committee. Would we be comfortable having a statement that says that, but also goes on to say that the finance committee will continue to monitor this situation and stay informed about this, or something that makes it clear that we intend to be aware of this, but at the same time acknowledging that the actual supervisory role is with another committee? Or is that not what your intent was?
No, I guess I would just go back to your original statement when it first came up, which was this isn't our purview, this is the purview of there's another committee
Right.
that's
No.
charged with this. So, well, I agree, though, that you mentioned many things that aren't ours, per se, right? These are important events in the town over the course of the year. But that one, we haven't dug into in the way that, I just don't want to, give that impression that we've gone through this
All right, well,
audit.
let's think about this. Let me.
Yeah, think about it.
Well, let's come up with at least a conceptual way of approaching it that we all agree on, and then we can wordsmith it. I'm not suggesting
Okay.
that we take up everybody's time wordsmithing it.
Yeah.
But, man, I tried to put it in a prominent place, but it's on the first page of the report. It's
Yes.
the first, it leads, this is the bad news, this happened.
Yep.
I thought about whether in our, we were talking about challenges going forward, where there's something about continually, monitoring it belonged somewhere in there, but I decided that it didn't. Why don't I punch up that statement in the chair's letter a little bit, just to add a sentence or a clause that picks up the theme.
Okay.
I do want to do it in a way that isn't us saying, this is not our job, but at the same time, I want to send the message that we're aware of this and that we're going to continue to stay aware of it, even though technically it's under the purview of another standing committee in town.
Maybe that's the way to say it, what you just said.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Now I just have to remember that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like Carlin got
This
it.
is
You
recorded.
can always go back to the tape.
I have one other comment, and it's regarding MCI, and it's in the middle of page 5.
Mm-hmm.
It's the second open bullet point. It begins transfer of control to Concord of the 51-acre MCI Concord parcel. And then goes on to say, number of housing units the state will require as a condition of ownership transfer. My understanding is that the state does not intend to transfer ownership. That's not on the table, but rather our control is through zoning.
Right, so it says transfer control,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So should it say control, transfer of zoning control?
Well, later it says ownership transfer on the third end of the third line down.
Right.
Yeah, and you were the liaison to the MCI group.
I was last year, but not
Not
this
this
year. But I noticed.
Megan agrees that it wouldn't be an actual transfer.
Yeah,
right? So,
Yeah.
let's get some clarification on that to me. It's important that we say it the right way. It's a major event for the town, and we have to characterize it properly.
From the beginning, the state was clear that they will not transfer title to Concord. So ownership transfer is not an option. And that our input here will be through zoning changes.
So who will own the real estate?
The state. And
State.
they'll sell it to developers of their choosing.
So Don, would it be, in the opening sentence, is it even fair to say that we have land use control?
I think there's some way to phrase that
Maybe
the
something
type
like
of
land use
control
control,
that you
but we
have
don't
through
even,
zoning.
do we even have that?
I would say our powers really are limited to zoning,
Which is land use?
as they are of any parcel in town, right?
Yeah. So
Lois,
maybe-
I'm going to suggest that we have Megan Zamudo come up here, who's a little more adverse on, informed on the position here.
Yeah, I think
Megan,
it's
can
a
you
good
help us with
suggestion.
this?
Sure. Good evening. Megan Zamudo, Deputy Town Manager. I'm happy to take a look at this if it'd be helpful, after this meeting. But as Don mentioned, land use control is a control that the community has. We are also master planning the site, so that is kind of a pre-zoning step that will lead to zoning in partnership with the Department of Capital Asset Management and Maintenance. So that is occurring, getting started just about now. And when we talk about the transfer, we might be getting a little mixed up about the potential to transfer the wastewater treatment system to the town of Concord, which was included in the legislation when the prison was going to be closed. There was a kind of a right of first refusal to the town of Concord for that critical asset, but the property itself, beyond that wastewater treatment component, is not anticipated to be transferred to the town of Concord.
Okay, we need to make that clear.
So kind of, sorry, Don. If the state owns the land, does our zoning supersede their ownership or not?
They have been very clear that that is our point of leverage in this process. Our ability to influence is through
Influence.
zoning. They will be not developing it themselves, but soliciting development proposals to private developers, presumably,
Okay.
who will be subject to zoning regulations.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it was a great question.
I think we should soften the word control.
Totally.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
Really
We-
soften the word control.
We need to
Yeah.
qualify
Because
that.
that implies,
Yeah, there's no transfer really going on there, yeah.
I see what you're
But
saying.
except
If
for
it
the
goes
water,
to a
wastewater
private
plant.
developer,
Except for the-
they would be subject.
Yes. Yeah, and the wastewater plant, we hope to end up with the ownership of, but it's not yet been resolved.
Good, thank you, Don. Appreciate
Even
that.
Yeah,
although
that's
we'll
good.
have we'll have the ownership of the plant, we won't own the land underneath it.
Oh, I believe we will have the acreage with the plant that is
Okay.
associated with the plant. And maybe a few more acres for public works.
Well, that's where I was going. I mean,
Yeah.
if we don't own the land, we don't have control over it. If we want to say, okay, we want to give X number of acres to public works, and we put a building on it,
Like, the
Okay,
point
okay,
is-
okay. I just want to rein this in a little bit. We're trying to get the language for this one little paragraph, and because we have a whole bunch more to go on.
I just wouldn't characterize it as transfer of control.
Fine.
No,
Point made.
Yeah,
Okay.
Got it.
good point.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you all.
So I have a note that we're going to redraft that second bullet, and we'll ask for some help from Megan to make sure that we're properly characterizing
Thank you.
how
Thank
that's
you
going
all.
to happen. Okay, that's great, thank you.
Don, did you have some other suggestions?
That's it for now, Carl, thanks.
Okay, Gerard, are you ready with your,
Yeah, if we can go to, it's on the top of my page 6.
and make sure you speak loudly enough so we can
All right,
pick up
it's the
on what.
first table, proposed overall town
What page
budget.
number?
It's either 5, there it is.
Page
All right,
6, I believe.
Page 6, all right. Bottom one, estimated tax
Impact.
impact. Could we get a percentage in there? Because I think we've done so well this year in keeping it down to say, okay, we've got the 24 cents per $1,000 valuation, which is great, but can you do a percent, just put a percentage in there?
Okay, so adding a percentage of the tax impact on page 6.
Percentage of what?
Yeah.
Increase year over year.
Yeah, percentage.
Increase year over year?
24 cents means,
Yes.
as an increase?
Yeah, 24 cents doesn't sound like much at all.
But to argue that that number, that impact was valued last year greatly by members of the town of saying, I really like the idea when we split out each of the warrant articles to understand, hey, this is how much I'm actually voting for, and how it's gonna affect me. So it's a real, like, actual number that they compare to their tax.
Yeah, that was
tax record.
introduced
So
with,
you weren't there for that, so I'm just bringing that up as a counterpoint.
no, that was one of the critical changes made in last year's finance report, and it really made the report more useful for people in town, and we got a lot of feedback on that. So, but I think the information will be there. The addition of a percentage doesn't, it's just a different way for people to
Think about it.
evaluate it.
Yeah, I'm not undercutting the idea of it, I'm just giving context.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks, Paul.
Okay, Gerard, what about other topics you
Um,
wanted to discuss?
That was the main one. The rest of these are fine. Okay?
Okay, you had asked me about the phrase estimated tax impact. Does that mean impact above what we currently pay, or does it mean just a component of the tax bill?
No. How much is it going to increase?
How much is it going to increase over last year?
Yes.
That's the part that you wanted to have
Yes.
clarified.
Does that make
Jennifer
sense?
and Ryan, does that make sense to you? Okay, good.
Right, thank you.
Thank you.
Anything
Anything else?
No, it's the main
Okay.
thing.
I think the rest we can pretty much figure out on the
It's
incorporation.
just a little
Okay.
English word.
Okay. Other suggestions?
Anybody else
Comments?
have any other?
How about online?
See,
Anything from Kathy, Brian, or Suresh about the report? How about, okay, Eric, go ahead.
I'll just say, I think it's very well done. It stands on its own. It's different from last year, which I think is a good thing. It's not, find and replace the date. It's original, so which makes it interesting. I think next year's report will be different from this one, and that's
Absolutely.
good. So I think it's great. I think it's ready to go.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. Carlin gets a lot of,
Well, it was a team effort.
it was really a
We
team.
had a lot of contributions.
One
Paul,
comment
go ahead.
to piggyback on that, it's also concise, that it's not too verbose associated with trying to get the point across, that more people will probably read it because it's not as long as it possibly could be, so
Yeah.
that's
Okay.
hard to do, so.
Yeah, actually, every time I read it, which was quite a number of times, it struck me that it has a lot of information in it.
Yes.
But and I think for the most part, it's presented in an accessible way, but it doesn't go on for pages. When I went back to some of our Finance Committee reports from 5 and 6 years ago, and they used to be 3 times the length. And this, I think, I'm hoping it'll be read more because it just won't be
Yeah,
overwhelming.
it presents a level of confidence associated with, here's the main point that I want to get across.
Yeah.
And not necessarily having to prove of why it's the main point, it's just, it is, so.
Thanks, Paul. Yeah.
Thank you. I wanted to try and keep this under 30 pages, so thanks to all of you folks. We're able to keep it under 30 pages, which is nice. Process as far as finalizing this, I've spoken with Shannon McAndrew, who's putting together the briefing book, and she wants it in a Word format Monday. Now, there's going to be some formatting of the table of contents as well as addition of these other line items and such. I'm ready to dedicate some time tomorrow afternoon and this weekend to work on that. But a review process, I'm guessing that Jennifer and Ryan will need to be the last people that touch this, because you'll need to be setting up the table of contents, make sure that works, and it works out best. And you, Lois, you're going to want to do a final say-so on what it looks like. Okay.
So we'll work on it over the weekend.
Okay, we'll work on it the weekend. What are you folks doing on the weekend?
It'll get,
And will you be available, and what's your
you know,
time?
this is now, the way I got into this was the very first year I was on the committee, and this is the end, it's been 6 years. Mary Hartman had the idea that she wanted to completely redo how the Finance Committee report read. And if you look back at those reports from 7, 8 years ago, they were totally different. And frankly, they were completely written by the Finance Department, and the chair would slap a letter on the front, and that was it.
Tony LaGalbo report.
Tony LaGalbo wrote the report, and the chair was allowed to add a couple paragraphs at the beginning, and that was it.
And we flatly declared we weren't doing it.
So, but by the time you guys came on the scene, we had shifted, and it really became a Finance Committee report. And it's evolved over time, and it's been a really interesting process to see it evolve. And now I'm hoping every year we found different ways to approach it. And as Eric said, last year's report was different, but it also was focused on identifying high-level information for the citizens, and that was what we tried to do here. This is, we spend the year learning on behalf of town meeting about the finance to the town, and this is our chance to tell people what we learned. And so that was the impetus behind structuring the report the way it is, to share the work we had done and what we had learned so that other people can get the benefit of it, and so that future finance committees can get the benefit of it too. It's an iterative process.
It is so much more streamlined. What I would like us to think about next year, and you don't have to worry about it, is maintaining certain tables and certain graphs. So people can look at they can take, this year 26, 27, 28, and there will be certain tables in there that they can compare every year.
Yep, I think
And
that's a
those
great
are-
suggestion.
I think those have been developed for this report, and I think that would be really helpful for the citizens, so.
So that's a good suggestion, really is.
Peggy, there's one in particular that we've kept up since the last 10 years or so, and that's on page 13. It's the proposed budget appropriation.
Yep.
And those numbers are being carried forward and have been done in the same format. So there's a way for us to do financial research and comparison over years for that one. Okay.
Can I ask a question?
Yes,
Jennifer?
go ahead.
In the projection of real estate taxes, what have you assumed for new growth? That, in other words, or is this tax rate, does this assume, I'm looking on page 15 at the 5-year projection of real estate taxes, is this simply incorporating all of the spending in the current tax base?
It's a really great question.
I think it assumes 1 million.
I'm pretty sure I assumed 1 million, yes. for
Because
new growth.
it's about 1% higher than I was expecting to see, and so I was wondering if the new growth was in it.
I put in 1 million in new growth,
You
but I
did.
did not escalate valuation otherwise.
Okay, thank you.
And those don't include the big projects because they don't have their
Correct.
building permits
That's
yet.
right,
Correct.
yeah.
Right.
So that's just,
And 1 million is kind of the
Who knows?
historic average for an annual.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's something that was kind of a revelation as we were looking into specific warrant articles and free cash this year. And the free cash balance is so high in part because in the last couple of years, we've had some upside. We've had some revenue upside. And on the one hand, it
and
meant...
some givebacks.
And some givebacks. And you want to go into this process, the budgeting process and this kind of estimating process, with conservative assumptions. So you don't want to build into the 5-year projection a huge amount of new growth. And you don't want to build into the budget generally very aggressive assumptions about revenue. But sometimes conservative budgeting means that, you collected more than you expected. And there were a couple $1 million in each of, what was it, fiscal year 23 and 4 or 24 and 5? 23 and 24, that were over the revenue estimates and ended up dropping into free cash. So now we get to do stuff with it. So if there's nothing else on the report, we'll move on, and it will look, there will be no surprises when you see it, when it's in its final form, because it will look as it does now, incorporating our discussions tonight. So, and thank you, everybody, for your input on that. Everybody who commented made it better. So, the next item on the agenda is to summarize what's going on with the Financial Policy Working Group, and we have 4/5 of the group here now. So I'll start with a little top-line summary and then ask Don and Ryan and Jennifer to kick in. And this also will segue into the supplemental presentations on the warrant articles. So the Financial Policy Working Group met on March 11th. We do not have the minutes available for that meeting yet. They will, I'm sure they'll get done soon. But the bottom line is that the Financial Policy Working Group is asking the Select Board to dissolve it. We're done for the moment. But before we could simply declare victory and go home, there was an important piece of clarification that had to go on. And this is what brings us forward to the discussion of the warrant articles. And unfortunately, we don't have Mark Howell here yet, so we'll take a few things out of order. But a question was raised on the town capital improvement plan, whether the plan as proposed complied with the percentages that are set out in the financial policies. And the issue was in part, how do you calculate the percentages? What's the denominator? So I'm going to defer to Don, because this is really his neighborhood. And then Ryan will be able to show us the conclusion that we came to, and how that will influence our discussion on Article 11 when we consider our vote on the town capital.
Thank you, Lois. So I begin by saying we did complete our mission, I guess. Here we redrafted in entirety, as you've seen previous meeting, the policy on reserves, and I think that this year we'll see some of the fruit of that with money going into the General Stabilization Fund and a warrant article to create a capital stabilization fund, and hopefully some free cash being voted into that as well. But we also, so that was really our bogey, if you will, for this committee. But we also wanted to take a hard look at the capital spending, and we opted not to take on the Herculean task of completely redrafting or that article. And however, we did clarify both the numerators and denominators here to be used. In particular, when we're talking about the spending of the Concord Public Schools and town, and looking at what's the appropriate metric for that, we balance them against the operating budgets of the Concord Public Schools and town combined. And that means that going forward, you'll see that denominator is less the spending on CC, the regional school district, and Minuteman, which makes sense. Since their capital is not in the numerator, their budget shouldn't be in the denominator. And I think that, I don't know if the select board has taken a vote on that yet. No, they haven't. But that was the conclusion of our little working group, and as Lois mentioned, we voted to dissolve ourselves. I hope that that in the future, another group will take on more aspects of the financial policies in total, and that there'll be a sort of a cycle to keep it refreshed. Things change, legislation changes, et cetera, and the town changes as well. But it was a very rewarding experience.
Yeah. Yeah, it really was. Carlin, do you have something?
Yeah, something new-ish. One of the elements that hasn't been incorporated in the financial reserve, in the finance policy, or considered by your group, I think was the excess levy capacity. In a meeting I was in earlier this week, there was a question about how much excess levy capacity should we have? And in our report, we talk about the levy capacity for fiscal year 25, 26, 27, ranging from roughly 2.5% up to almost 4.3%. Now, we never talked about what excess levy capacity, which is a Proposition 2.5 issue, that we should have. We never looked at that, did we? And that wasn't part of your discussion, was it?
It doesn't seem like something we would, certainly not something we were charged with, but also not something you would set a policy on, because you don't want to handcuff future select boards from going for overrides for good reasons, et cetera. So it's more of a best practice, or what we think is.
I don't think there's a specific, I don't think it's addressed in the current financial
It's not.
policies.
I just searched it.
Yeah, it's not. And we spent, when we were looking at the overall financial policies, we as a group, we would go off to our little corners and we would do research online, looking at financial policies for various towns, looking at model policies that are promulgated by the state. And it's not something you see in the financial policy documents, and I think probably for exactly the reasons Don was saying. So we made sure, because I know it's a concern, hi Peggy, of members of the committee appropriately, that we stay aware of where we are in our projected budgets against our levy capacity. And that's something that we should be continuing to monitor. But we are in good shape this year. And that's what we get to say in the report. We're not coming up against it. In past years, we were concerned. But I think a number of things have broken well. Wendy, it's timely, we're talking about the Financial Policy Working Group.
Everything.
So now the fifth member of the group just arrived. Anyway, so I don't think it's something that should be on the agenda for whatever group succeeds us. The Financial Policy Working Group was formed to address a very specific issue that was a disconnect in understanding between the Select Board and the Finance Committee that arose rather dramatically at town meeting. And I think all of us who worked on the group, Wendy will tell me if she thinks I'm wrong, feel good about the outcome, that the issues were resolved in a way that is, we think, good for the town over the long term and good for the collaborative process between the various boards and institutions in town. So I feel like it's a success story. So.
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, you all were involved in the review and approval of the reserve policy. That's done, and I think we were going to have some discussion on debt, so I'm not sure where you're going for today's discussions.
So we just talked about the definition of how to calculate the percentages under the debt policy. And what I was going to do is ask Ryan to start to discuss that. And probably, Ryan, should we consider this moving to the next agenda item, which is?
It kind of blends in a little bit.
It does. It's a segue.
It
Do you want to
both.
start first, and then
Sure.
then we'll do something formal about this?
Sure,
Because this
sure.
relates to Article 11, which is one of
Sure.
the 3 articles that we are going to be voting on tonight.
Right. So I'm going to start with this table because it addresses some of the questions that were asked at the hearing. Specifically, what are the elements that free cash we're proposing that free cash be utilized? I think that was, Carlin, you were asking questions about that, as well as other questions I think John and Eric were bringing up regarding what we'll have left over and what can we potentially use for free cash to fund fund some of our Tier 2 spending for capital. So as a reminder, our free cash has been certified at 17 million. A little slow here. Our articles here, Article 7 is restoring balances close to free cash. We have our
That's a plus.
yeah, these are all these are all going to be
These are proposed uses.
proposed
For
uses,
uses of
right?
free
Proposed
cash.
uses of free cash, right? Article 8 is our dispatch collective bargaining settlement. 9, we have our, we talked about this, this was the COVID deficit that we need to cover. This is the last year we can carry that, or else that will hit the tax rate. Article 12, we're going to talk a little bit more about that later tonight. That's currently at $600,000. We have also Article 13, which is part of the standard budget approval for the Concord Public Schools. This is for the McKinney-Vento Homeless Transportation Program, so it covers them on that. And then Articles 20 and 21 were recommendations that were made from the Financial Policy Working Group to add to the Capital Stabilization Fund in the amount of $1.25 million and the General Stabilization Fund of $750,000. So the subtotal of all those items is about $4.5 million. And then if you take item A here, which is free cash, and you subtract what our proposed uses are, we have a balance of about $12.5 million. Now,
Ryan, excuse me. What if, some of those amounts are spending amounts, so we're going to be spending it, whereas the last two items, we are actually putting into a reserve, if you like.
Right.
So to me, we're saying, you know, we're going to use $4.4 million, but of that, $2 million is going into reserves, so we aren't really
Right.
spending it, if you like.
yeah, so these are uses of free cash.
But it's
Yeah.
reducing the free cash.
Oh, yeah, I know.
Yeah, right, right.
Yes,
So,
absolutely.
right, yeah, no, that's right, you're right, yeah, that's right, that's right.
But is it worth noting that? You know, if I'm a person and I'm looking at this, we're saying, okay, we're going to spend $4.5 million, to me, it's not quite spending it.
Mhm.
You're spending 2.5, you know, you're taking $2 million and you're putting it
So,
into
Gerard,
reserves.
so the point of it is what the proposed transfers of from free cash are,
Yeah.
right?
That's what we're
So it can be, you know, they could be contributions, they can pay for projects.
Right.
So that's the specific focus of the table.
Okay.
Okay.
Can I ask 2 questions? Do you mind?
No, not at
What
all.
is the 948? Can you explain that? That looks like it's coming to free cash, but it's going out of free cash?
That is
Seven.
Article
Seven.
Article
7,
seven.
and that, Jennifer's presentation on that at the hearing was, I thought, quite clear.
Okay, I'm
But we
sorry, I
can,
wasn't
no,
there.
don't worry about it. We could pull up that presentation,
No, I'm fine.
but it has to do, Jennifer, can you summarize it in a sentence?
They were unexpended appropriations in fiscal year '24 that closed to free cash, increased the free cash balance. They should have been encumbered in other ways
Okay,
at that time.
understood.
Point of note, the Article 8, if Article 7 passes, Article 8 will not be used as free cash. It will be coming from the salary reserve that's being replenished. So it's a formality, but if Article 7 doesn't pass, then we'll have to use free cash for Article 8. So,
Okay.
but this is all of the possible uses of free cash, so we could still have an extra 58,000 in the free cash if the first one passes.
Okay.
We understand that, I think, Gerard, this is what you were saying, some are not optional and some are optional. For example, the set-asides in 20 and 21, and also 12, I think,
No, my
are
point,
things we want to do that are on the warrant. The other ones, we kind of have to do.
But they're all
Also on the
articles.
warrant.
They're all articles.
Yeah, on the
Right.
warrant.
Not
passed.
Yeah.
Yeah,
They could
it's
all.
just to reflect what's on the warrant.
Okay.
Okay, so as we move down, I talked to Don earlier, he didn't, he pointed out this really isn't a target, but really more of a floor. One of the rules for our financial policies is that we have free cash is 4% of our general fund budget, so that target is just under 6 million here. So we need to retain that in free cash before we use it for anything else. So if we take this item C, we subtract out D, that leaves us a balance of about 6.7 million here. So that's what we have to play with. Then the question, playing's a relative term. Playing's a relative term. That's right, that's right. The night is young. The night is young. The night is young. So, so the question that was asked before about, what does our tier 2 capital spending look like? Well, remember, one of the things we talked about is our tier 2 spending is going to go down by $850,000 because we anticipate that we'll be funding the expansion of the Sleepy Hollow Cemetery via the overlay surplus, which reduces that commitment down to 1.55 million. So if we were to, hypothetically, which I think, again, this is some of the questions Eric and John, you were asking, is if we used that from free cash, that would reduce our balance down to 5.1 million. The advantage of doing that is that if we, is I think the question, and I think Lindsay, you were asking this question about what's the total interest associated with the borrowing for 10 years at 1.55 million. It's about, over the 10 years, it's about $426,000. So that's one of the questions that may be here before you to think about that. And that you'll be, that when you talk about the capital budget, and it would probably be looking for some sort of recommendation on that, so.
Don, go ahead.
Just one point of clarification, Ryan, and that is that while the floor for free cash is 4%, that same policy says the floor for the general stabilization is also 4%, so
right,
together that would be an 8% floor of reserves, which would imply a different number.
But that, yes, but Don, as you remember too, we've already committed to a separate plan to contribute to that over the years to the general stabilization fund.
I agree. It doesn't mean that there's a problem that we don't have the 4% minimum in that.
Right.
But we don't want to give the impression that we can go below 8% of the combination of those two. So while one is at about a little under 2 million today. It would also have a floor, theoretically, of, what was that number again?
5.9.
5.9. So I would say that the amount we actually have to play with is about 600,000.
Only if we were deciding to immediately increase general stabilization to the floor, which is not what has been discussed. What's been discussed is ramping it up over time.
I agree, but that says that the combination should be 8%.
Yes, the goal is to make it all, to get to 8%. It's, I don't know how this question gets framed in terms of the articles that are already pending, but there are other uses that can be made of free cash that will have other kinds of benefit for the citizens. For example, Ryan just gave us one, reducing the borrowing that would otherwise be made to pay for tier 2 projects. So, there isn't an article before town meeting that's talking about funding the general stabilization fund right up to its floor. The article that's being presented to town meeting is, are we putting 750?
750, up on
750
Article
in general
21.
stabilization.
Yeah.
And the presentation on that showed the ramp up, that over the next, I'm gonna forget, how many years?
10
10
years, I think,
years,
is what
it'll
we
get
did.
up to that level.
Yes.
And that's one of the articles we already approved.
It is.
But you're just stating that's the policy, not the goal, right? Is the 8%, I think, of the combined, so we have the opportunity to.
To Don's point,
right?
if we take the 1.1 that's currently in the general stabilization plus the 750, that puts us just under 2. Of that 5 million for could be earmarked to go to general stabilization over time.
I wasn't even thinking of it as that. I was just thinking that, well, maybe we have 4% floor in free cash. Doesn't mean that it can't be higher,
Yeah.
because by definition,
That's right.
and that the policy is a 4% floor for general stabilization, doesn't mean it can't be higher, but those two floors together would be 8%. And I think that the policy, I don't have it in front of me, but I think it addresses that and says that it's 8%.
It
And so
actually says
I don't want to give the
combination over
impression that
10
we
needs to
can.
not be 10.
Right,
It needs
that
to
was
not be
what-
10, over 10.
To not exceed
Yeah,
that.
there you go.
Then there's a plan.
So that amount of, if we, let's say for argument's sake, that general stabilization is 2%, I don't know where we'll be. And that, then I would expect that we would be managing to an 8% number.
And this still satisfies that.
Yeah, okay, that's all.
This still, we are still well over the 8% combination.
Terrific, that's all, that's my point, thanks.
So, moving on.
Yeah, right. So this provide, I just wanted to, again, to address some of the questions that Lindsay, John, and Eric had too, that brings us to the next piece, and this is what the Financial Policy Working Group had been putting together. And this is huge, but we did two things. We did really two things here, and I want to point you to the bottom, and that's, Dawn had touched on this earlier. It's defining what total budget is, and for the purpose of our definition, it's the town policy that a target of 7 to 8% of the total budget net of the excluded debt levy be allocated for capital financing. But one of the issues that we had is that no one defined what is total budget. So the really two key things that we addressed in our last Financial Policy Working Group meeting was to define those two things. So total budget, we are now defining as the town-related expenditures minus CCRSD and Minuteman High School operating and capital/debt expenses. So Don had touched on that earlier. And when it comes to capital finance, that's defined as debt service and transfers to reserves. Because one of the things that we were talking about in the Financial Policy Working Group is we are starting to take actions to use free cash to fund potentially, or to fund contributions to reserves, and we try to be more active with that. So this is, I apologize in advance for how wide this is, but basically we have the 8 to 7, or the 7 to 8% target here. It's showing town in guideline spending, our joint accounts, our Tier 1 capital, OPEB, our overlay contribution this year, which is $500,000, Articles 20 and 21, which we just talked about, and CPS is Concord Public Schools. Now, what we have here that we put zeros in for CCRSD and Minuteman, consistent with how we're defining that budget. We've got town excluded debt, and we've got CPS debt. As you can see, CPS debt really much larger than what we have for town debt. And we take out, and then we make no mention of the CCRSD debt or the Minuteman debt. So when we total all that up, that's 112.5 million. And our target between 7 and 8% is between 7.9 and about 9 million. So that is that's our I guess our denominator in this case.
Yeah.
A denominator, yes. So our denominator, and now we have to look at our numerator in this case. We take out the Tier 1 capital, and we've got debt service within the levy limit. If we were to fund our Tier 2 funding, or our debt, which is now the 1.55 million, that in year one will be with principal and interest, we estimate to be $232,500. And then we add back in Articles 20 and 21. So when we do that, and we have our target between 7 and 8%, we are down here a little bit lower than that, at 6.2%. So we're a little under that target. But one of the things that we're contemplating today is also looking at what the impact might be if we were to utilize free cash as another funding source. So this is the same table. If we go down here. And the highlighted section shows that if we were to utilize free cash to pay that 1.55 million, what that would look like. And then that gets us right here to 7.3%, right between 7 and 8, and we get a little checkbox next to it. So, so that is another take at this, if just to kind of give you a sense of perspective. The other elements, and I'm going to go back to it's the same, these other columns here, which are our other targets. Of the 7 to 8%, no more than 5% shall be for debt service within the levy limit. So this is non-excluded debt. So taking the same tally at 5%, that target's about 5.6 million. We take out the tier 1, we don't mention it, we just bring it forward. We have debt service within the levy limit, as well as what we're anticipating that year 1 of the debt that we would be taking on. And that gets us to have right about $5 million. And we are right in the target where we need to be at 4.4%. So that's column 2 here. The next, the next sort of other test that we have is capital outlay from town departments and the Concord Public Schools shall be at least 2 to 3% of the annual budget, not including excluded debt. Basically, this is our target for tier 1 spending and how we think of that. So we look at, again, our net number between 2 and 3%. That's our target. This is what we're proposing to spend on tier 1. It's about 2.3 million for the town and 500,000 for CPS. That totals 2.8 million, and we meet our target right directly in the middle at 2.5%. So, you know, these are the things that I think Don was asking about that we addressed and talked about in the financial policy working group. I think, Don, I think we can safely say we addressed your questions and concerns within this. But, you know, but these are the things we wanted to get through to present to the rest of the Finance Committee, to explain to you that we've been looking at this and give an update on what's been happening with the Financial Policy Working Group, and as well as provide a context for when you consider Article 11, with, you know, because that's still a vote still needs to be taken on that.
So what I'd like to do, unless somebody has some very specific questions for Ryan about this, is the meat of our work tonight is we got 3 articles that we didn't vote on. And the first of them ties right into this. It's Article 11, which is the town capital improvement and debt plan. It's the tier 2 special, basically. When we looked at the presentation at the hearing, questions were asked about where the proposal was in the context of the financial policies that set these target percentages, both as caps and as minimums, because the policy does say that the town should be spending a certain amount every year to maintain its capital assets, but at the same time should be managing its borrowing to not exceed certain percentages, and that was what Ryan just presented. So are we ready to move on to talk about Article 11? And what I'm going to propose we do, if people are comfortable with this, is I'm going to ask for a motion and a second, but then we'll really have a discussion before we have a vote. Or would people rather have a general discussion first and then, anybody?
Yeah.
Madam Clerk, what do you think?
I have a question about the motion itself. Do we need to make any changes to the motion besides, for example, moving Article 11 as, recommending affirmative action on Article 11? Do we need to make any amendments?
I will draw your eye to the screen. There are 2 possible motions for you to consider. The first incorporates the overlay surplus and allows for borrowing of 1.55 million. The second incorporates the overlay surplus and transfers from free cash the 1.55 million. So essentially, my interpretation is those are your choices.
Is there a hybrid option? Or I'm just wondering, can we do kind of a portion from free cash and a portion from debt?
You can do whatever you want.
Well, that's not totally
What's
true.
the current motion proposed?
The current
For town
motion
meeting.
was, in the article, is the total for raise and appropriate and to borrow.
The first one.
The borrowing
the
is
first
2.4.
Yeah.
Right,
I can show you that
but
motion as well.
that's the article. Is there a motion that the select board has come up with that's closer to your alternative one, or? Is there a new motion coming from the select, I assume this is a select board article.
That is it, right? It hasn't been
Yeah, this,
changed.
this is it. The total appropriation doesn't change. It's just the funding sources. Actually, the total does change. We've reduced it by $62,000.
I think the point is that the language of the original motion let any option be chosen. You know, you could borrow, you could do it from other funds, such as the overlay surplus or free cash. What Jennifer is saying to us now is, we can vote to recommend a motion, affirmative action on a motion that defines where the money's coming from. And we can say, you know, you gotta take it from these places, or you can only take so much from free cash. So, I mean, am I characterizing that properly?
Yep, this was the original motion from the original article,
From the
and those are the
article, not the
$2 amounts. Since then, we have gotten approval from the assessors to release overlay surplus for 2 of the purposes within this article. So we're reducing the 125,000 for the revaluation down to 59. So that's why the dollar here is less.
And the big project of expanding the cemetery, which was $850,000, which was going to be financed through borrowing, is now going to be financed through a transfer from the overlay surplus. So that's really good news.
It's great news.
So why don't you put up the 2 motions that you're asking us to think about? And let's open the floor to a discussion about those 2 motions in general terms.
Okay, good question.
Sure, Lindsay.
I'm trying to understand the policy that Don brought up about that combined amount being 8%, if you kind of add the free cash and the stabilization balances. How much could we reduce free cash by, or how much free cash could we use towards Article 11 and still maintain the 8% balance, assuming all other articles move forward as proposed?
Yes, so that was the option, the second option.
So you're saying we can, because I was trying to do the back of the envelope, and I don't know if I was doing it right, that's why I'm asking, because it didn't seem like we could actually take 1.55 million from free cash and still stay above the combined 8%.
Yes, we can.
We can, okay, okay.
Yes.
Great. So
that-
then.
That
okay.
1.55 keeps us in that 7.3.
Oh, okay, okay.
Right.
All right, that's, okay, got it.
And it stays above the 8% as well.
And
Okay,
this,
it stays above the 8%. So
believe
what,
it does.
because what is the current balance of the stabilization fund? I think that's the piece.
general stabilization
The
1,110,000.
Yes.
1,110,000,
Right.
okay. Okay, so it does.
And the
Yeah,
proposal is
okay.
under Article 21 to
Yeah.
contribute another 750,000.
Yeah, so we'd still have more than 200,000
Yeah.
above it, okay.
Thank you, that was
Right?
my question
Okay.
as well. So
Yeah.
I didn't do the math. So you
Okay.
said, if we do.
If we use all 1.55 from free cash, we'll
Yeah.
still stay above 8% and have cushion.
Then I support that.
Yeah, I support it too then, yeah.
I make the motion that we do 1.5 out of free cash.
Yeah.
let's put them back up so we can be let's read the article that seems to be getting the support, and then let's have a vote on that. So let's read the actual text.
I put it under Mr. Hull, but it's certainly up to a mover to raise and appropriate $2,169,420, to transfer from overlay surplus $909,000, and to transfer from free cash $1,550,000 for a total appropriation of $4,628,420 to fund the FY27 capital improvement and debt plan as printed in the briefing book, such funds to be expended under the direction of the town manager.
So assuming that's the motion,
So I make that motion. Article 11, Alt 1.
all right, so we,
Second.
okay, so we
Yeah.
have just made a motion to recommend affirmative action on that motion for town meeting. Paul made the motion, Don seconded. Is there any further discussion about the motion? Any other questions?
I just want to point out to the committee that these, both the Tier 1 capital and the Tier 2 total spending are much lower than the original numbers we saw from the town, and much lower than last year. In fact, Tier 2 is lower than the expiring, rolling off portion, bringing down our total Tier 2 debt.
Peggy, you had a
I
comment?
would just request the select board member, or members that are in the audience to comment on this, because I'm just not sure which is, if we're the cart or near the horse, or they're the horse and we're the cart.
Well, they already voted,
they
they were waiting, thank you, I was there, I should be remembering this. The select board deferred action on this article until we took action on the article, because they wanted to see what we wanted to do, and we had not yet voted on it.
I want to do what they want.
I'll give you my reason why I made this motion.
Sure.
Is if we can save money on debt service and use some of that free cash to save that money on debt service, why wouldn't we?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I agree. And particularly because this is a year when we can afford to do this, and we can still afford to make the investment in the stabilization funds that we're
Yes.
proposing.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay.
So,
Yeah,
Carla?
Okay, I'm in favor of this motion, but I have to ask, what's the downside to doing this? Are we shortchanging next year's budget? What's the downside, Jennifer? Ryan?
If I were to play devil's advocate, you're not continuing your debt service levels because you're going to see a reduction in a year, but it's only a matter of, what, $230,000. So I would say the downside is 5%. The upside is you're using free cash that you have available and you're saving $430,000 over the life of the loan.
Okay.
And part of it is also finding strategies for that free cash, so that it is having uses in the reserves, that, what you'll be able to get for in terms of your investment plan. And, it's just smart budgeting to think in those
Yeah.
terms.
Any other further discussion? Anybody online, or are we ready for a vote? I see no hands, so, Carlin, do you want to start taking the roll?
Sure, this is the motion for affirmative action on Article 11, and the wording is what's shown on the screen is the second option that we discussed in this meeting. The motion is for affirmative action on Article 11. Suresh Bhatia,
Yes.
Peggy Briggs,
Yes.
Brian Conway,
Yes.
Kathy Kukalo,
Yes.
Eric Dahlberg,
yes.
John Garofalo,
Yes.
Pat Geyer,
Yes.
Gerard Jansen,
Yes.
Don Kupka,
Yes.
Lindsay List.
Yes.
Naranjana Nagarajan?
Yes.
My apologies. Thank you. Carlin Reed, yes. I need more practice. Paul Rodriguez.
Yes.
Lois Wassoff.
Yes.
Okay, that was unanimous vote. Do you agree, Pat? Yes, I do. Okay. Passes.
Okay, so now we're going to move to,
Actually, Madam Chair, if possible, we have some of the folks representing the Beatty Center here. That I'm thinking that might be a quicker one to take on. And,
do you want to take them before we take Article 12? Because we also have the entire select board here.
yeah, that's fair enough.
Your call.
Yeah, your call.
Well, we've got information, the Beatty Center information is in the packet, the answer to our questions. It's on page 24 of the packet, so I hope everybody's had a chance to look at it. Because the way we thought we would do this, for those, at the last hearing on the enterprise funds, we voted to defer taking action on Article 48 until this meeting because we really felt that we needed additional information from the Beatty Center. And we provided them with a set of questions that picked up the themes of the questions that had been asked during the hearing. And this is their response. We wanted to know about membership categories and trends. We wanted to understand the presentation wasn't quite explicit, but it was clear that money was being taken out of their retained earnings to pay for something this year, and it didn't really explain to us what it was. So we felt we needed to know that before we could vote. So the information is there, and we have two representatives of the Beatty Center here who are ready to answer our questions. So they weren't asked to do a presentation. So I'm going to ask people to, take a minute to review what was provided. Do we have additional questions for the Beatty Center based on what they have already provided to us?
I have one.
I'll make a comment, Lois, if you don't mind. This information satisfies like what I was looking for, so thank you for putting it together. I have no issue.
Carlin, you had a question.
Yeah, I just want to verify the dollar amount of the retained earnings. And I see we have all three representatives here, so Jess, Lee, Jenny, who can respond to that? What's the dollar amount of the retained earnings?
I am.
Oh,
4,585,406 is the certified retained earnings for fiscal year 2025.
And that's as of March 12th?
That is as of July 1st, 2025. That's the certified retained earnings.
July 1st. Thank you.
That does prompt one question that I didn't know I had until now. I was at the Recreation Commission meeting when the budget was presented there, and as I recall, I'm looking for the number now, the operating budget includes interest income.
Mm-hmm.
Will this transfer reduce that interest income, and just to double check to make sure that that doesn't put the budget in jeopardy?
So think of retained earnings, certified retained earnings, as the Beatty Center's own little free cash.
Okay.
So that is their undesignated fund balance of free cash just for them. So if we use 1.1 million for their capital, it's only going to reduce their fund balance by that amount. It's not going to impact their operating, which is balanced with their revenues.
Though Don is right that the way the revenues balance was they used interest from this fund. Or they used an interest figure. There was about 230.
The fund earns its own interest annually.
So my question was, is that interest going to be adequate after these capital improvements?
Yes, yeah, it should be fine.
It will still be, okay, thanks.
Eric.
Could I read, this is outside of the scope of tonight's discussion, but this is an annual article, and it's at least the last few years, it seems to be shaky every year. We have questions, and it just seems a little unbaked. Can I respectfully request that we get a mid-year update on the Beatty Center next year? Would that be appropriate?
I think that's a good idea. I think you should raise it at the May meeting of the Finance Committee.
See, the Finance Department
Yeah,
is
Megan,
making
no.
a note of that.
That's right.
But I think it's a good idea.
Mm-hmm.
And just to be clear, I think the Beatty Center's been responsive.
Yeah.
We felt that the information and the presentation wasn't quite what we were hoping for, and you responded, and we appreciate it.
Yeah.
And I think maybe a mid-year meeting next year will be a good idea, and that information will help inform the presentation at the following Finance Committee hearing. So, because the questions will be very much the same, I'm sure, as the ones that we're asking. So.
Thank you.
So,
Jennifer has it.
I want to make sure that Carlin gets the number she needs. Do you need a March 3rd number to match all of the other March 3rd balances?
Whatever needs to go into the finance committee report for the balance, it needs a date as of, it. That's the number.
So the table currently has a date as of the table, so instead of individual dates, so for consistency there, the March 3rd balance, you want that?
Sure.
Sure, it's $5,933,359.
359 is the last three digits?
Mhm.
9593359. Got it.
Yes,
Right.
that's the March 3rd undesignated fund balance.
March
And
3rd,
that's-
2026. Thank you very much.
now, would someone like to make a motion that we recommend affirmative action on Article 48?
So moved.
That's
Paul, someone second. Gerard. Any further discussion? I see no hands online. I see no hands in the room. Carlin, could you call the roll?
Happy to do so. Okay, this is a motion for affirmative action on Article 48 as presented. Suresh Bhatia,
Yes?
Peggy Briggs,
Yes.
Brian Conway,
Yes.
Kathy Kukalo,
Yes.
Eric Dahlberg,
Yes.
John Garofalo,
Yes.
Pat Guyer,
Yes.
Gerard Jansen,
Yes.
Don Kupka,
Yes.
Lindsay Liss,
Yes.
Niranjana Nagarajan.
Yes.
Getting closer, that one. Thank you. Carlin Reed, yes. Paul Rodriguez.
Yes.
Lois Wassoff.
Yes.
Okay, by my count, I've got 14 yes, 0 no, 0 abstention. Pat, do you match? Motion passes unanimously. Thank you very much.
Thank you guys very much for coming. Okay. And now,
Okay, do you guys want, do you want to come up, or how do you want to do this? I can, come on in, the water's fine.
Obviously, I brought my lifelines.
So, you want, do you, I can have you do it then, that's fine. Would you like to do it? I guess, because you're a guest, and then I can.
so
promote.
the last of the articles
What is it?
that,
Why don't you just advance and I'll...
No problem, okay.
so the
Yeah,
last
yeah.
of the articles is Article 12. And again, this was a situation where we had questions. And we asked, it's a select board article, and we asked that Mark, who had presented, give us additional information. And Mark, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Great. Thank you. Thanks for the opportunity to talk in more detail about this. As you know, the facilities planning work is very much in progress now. The select board put the article forward ahead of and with anticipation of the fact that the land use working group was going to complete their phase 1 report in February without knowing exactly what that report was going to contain, which is in part the explanation for why when we put the article in the warrant in the first place, it didn't have a number, it didn't have a lot of details, and so we've moved forward to refine that. So the motion is pretty straightforward. Use $600,000 of free cash for planning for facilities, and I'm going to take you through some more detail about how we might do that. So thank you for the next slide. How did we get to 600,000? This was one of your questions from last Thursday night. And essentially, it's based on the scale and complexity of the work. We have multiple major municipal facilities across several sites, really all town operation sites, to consider in this. But primarily amongst those, there are 3 major programs: the public safety renovation and rehabilitation of those facilities, the public works facilities, and an opportunity to consolidate municipal offices for efficiencies. For context, The vision study that was completed last year for MCI Concord cost $400,000, and it was funded through a state earmark, so we did not spend town cash for that. The MCI master plan, MCI Concord master plan, which is just kicking off, the contract was awarded, will cost $550,000. That is designed to create a master plan for the MCI site and only the MCI site, and get us a zoning package, again, for that 51-acre site. And that's going to cost about $550,000. So just, you know, as an order of magnitude, when we were talking about the combination of the public works facilities and the public safety facilities, we're talking about something fairly comparable here. And we're talking about a broader scope. So we're going to be looking at multiple facilities across the town and trying to understand the future capital costs for these major projects. Next slide, please. The timeline is also interesting. In 2019 and 2020, the facilities needs were identified through the use of a report that was referenced by the Land Use Working Group, and identified these critical needs around the municipal facilities. Between 2020 and 2024, you'll notice a gap in our timeline, what was going on in there. Besides, you know, a small worldwide epidemic, we were also working on the middle school. The priority amongst the town's finances was the $100 million middle school, which has been delivered and is operating very well. But really, that is the culmination of 5 major capital projects which have brought the town of Concord a completely new set of schools. During that time, our municipal facilities, particularly the police and fire station, have gotten even, you know, more than 20 years older than they were when that was started, and have reached a condition where they're failing. It's also worth noting at this point that one of the facilities, the lone facility that the school department is really using, the Ripley School, is part of this request. That building was 50 years old when we started replacing elementary schools, and has not been used as an elementary school. And the school committee during that time frame between 2020 and 2024 did do a facility study there, and that facility study, not surprisingly, indicated that Ripley is basically a failing building, and its needs for renovation or replacement are very high as well. So that's part of the scope here. In the meantime, between 2024 and 2025, we saw new land opportunities emerge in the form of the MCI Concord opportunity. And so the select board asked formed the land use working group to address these strategic opportunities. We received the phase 1 recommendations in February, again, just about a month ago. And now we're coming to town meeting with a refined request that says, what do we need to do to act on those recommendations? And with the anticipation that that once those studies and that work is done, we would be prepared to recommend zoning in the case of surplus land reuse, or acquisition or disposition of land to address the needs of these various programs, and potentially capital project authorization. And I'm going to take you through some details on each of those. Next, please. So the Land Use Working Group, of which Sven Weaver is one of the co-chairs, was established in July. So in 7 short months, they evaluated what had been done previously to assess municipal facilities. They looked at a number of land use long-term opportunities and really helped us prioritize the needs for municipal town facilities. And they are pretty much in this order: the public safety facilities, the municipal public works facilities, and the consolidation of administrative functions. And so next slide. And this is one of the charts that I use. So that 7-month process evaluated those facilities, and it included a great deal of work It was done to really bringing together all available information, and it identified some opportunities and recommendations. However, it didn't get down to what is the actual cost and plan of these things. So that's what our next step is really to identify those based on that. Please, next. So the key findings, though, were, as I've already said, several core municipal facilities are beyond their intended life and they're failing. Existing facilities are undersized and outdated. The operations of the town are fragmented across multiple locations, which leads to inefficiencies, safety concerns, and problems with service delivery. And there is growth, particularly in West Concord, with the housing that's really in the pipeline with the 40Bs, as well as what's contemplated as part of the redevelopment of MCI Concord. It's going to actually shift where those services need to be delivered, and we need to position ourselves in order to be able to respond to that. Next. So in order, as I just mentioned, West Concord is growing, and a new West Concord fire station, which would act as the fire headquarters station, in other words, be larger than the larger station, which is currently in Concord Center, is probably the highest priority because of the way there's an imbalance between our service delivery and our service needs. A new or renovated police headquarters is also a high priority because if the police were to no longer be using the Walden Street Police Fire Station as their headquarters, then that opens up a possibility to solve the third priority, which is to renovate the Concord Center Fire Station to be more able to meet those needs for the fire department. So that's a very high level set of priorities which need to be further defined, need to be understood much more carefully. Land would need to be acquired for that. The work that's going to be done in here is going to facilitate some of that. In terms of public works, again, the Kaiser Road facility has all of the same problems that I mentioned, and the land use working group identified that the MCI Concord location is a good location for relocating public works. And there are potential opportunities for building reuse there. There are some synergies with the fact that we are in negotiations to take over the wastewater treatment facility there. That will require some kind of let's call it industrial commercial buffer around it. You do not want to be living exactly next to a wastewater treatment facility, so housing within that buffer is not necessarily an appropriate solution. There were other options that the land use working group also acknowledged could potentially house the public works facilities, Ripley being one and a Bedford Street location being another. But if anybody paid attention to the most recent land use working group meeting as of last Friday, we understand that there are significant concerns about both of those as possibilities. And I would say that it's quite fair to say that if MCI turns out not to be the solution, then some of these others would be studied. But this money's not going to go in the direction of looking at those for public works specifically. Although there is work that's going to be done to understand what Ripley's future use should be, which is a different question. And in terms of municipal consolidation, the reason to keep this one really on the list is because consolidating into the preferred strategy of purchase and renovate an existing office building opens up the ability to fund some of these stages by looking at what is the value of the property that might be surplus in that case. So that is what those recommendations did. We've got some more details for you here. In rough numbers, again, these are very high level. Of the 600,000, 350 of it would be allocated towards these next steps identified around public safety: community outreach, a feasibility study, schematic design for what a new fire headquarters, most likely located in West Concord, would look like, how Walden Street could or might be potentially reused or redesigned, and cost modeling for all of that, including what the timing should look like. Those of us that remember the fire in the West Concord Fire Station know that you can't just stop using your fire department. We pitched a tent in the MBTA parking lot, and the fire department operated out of there for a year and a half while we did a very necessary renovation for that building. Unfortunately, the building is really doesn't meet our needs. So that was, of course, paid for by insurance, but that's the kind of thing that has to be in the roadmap. Next slide, please. In terms of public works, again, the focus will be on community outreach. What are the implications? What is the feasibility and schematic design for the MCI location specifically? And this is going to need to be coordinated with the separate, but taking place at the concurrently MCI master planning activity. So we would need to, we don't have that property in hand yet, so we would need to make that part of a negotiation with the state. We are only expecting that 150 of this 600,000 would be allocated towards this, but that's because there was already some ARPA funding that's available for, that was identified for public works as part of that program, and a $125,000 capital article from 2014, which gives you an idea how long ago it was identified that the public works facility was failing. So 12 years later, we're starting to spend money that town meeting already appropriated towards this purpose. But if you add all that up, that makes public works about a $380,000 effort, which is quite comparable to the public safety investment and similar types of activities. But again, it's a negotiation and it's about MCI. And finally, for the municipal consolidation, again, community outreach to try and understand which functions might be best consolidated and where. And particularly for use, if a target property is identified, in other words, an existing office building someplace in Concord, then the renovation acquisition costs, the planning for that building would need to be funded here. And then likewise, the offset side of it is what is the disposition and zoning strategy for those properties. And we're already started on that using some of the ARPA funding to do what's called a yield analysis against the Ripley site, the Peabody School site, the Keyes Road campus, and the 55 Church Street campus. And that's because each one of those is highly likely to be involved either in the public works move or the municipal consolidation piece. Next, please. So again, the land use working group did not include detailed site feasibility analysis, any kind of engineering or architectural studies, did not attempt to ascertain what any level of refined costs would be. It didn't do space programming or facility design or what the timing or financial analysis, and it certainly didn't attempt in 7 months to engage the public over what these important decisions are that need to be made for the future. These are the things that we're investing in here in this article. So this is basically about moving from ideas to implementation and to do a plan. So hopefully that answered some of the questions that you had last week. I'm happy to take more. And as I said, I have some help you with me tonight if you have any questions that I can't answer.
Thank you. Thank you, Mark. I'm going to look around. I'll start here in the room. Do people have questions for Mark about this? Eric?
Thank you for the presentation. Is the intention to put this out for competitive bid?
So different segments of it will, in fact, so the MCI master plan was put out as an RFP. The request for proposals for the yield analysis work was already done as well. The select board is still discussing, and this is one question that's, you guys had asked about governance over this too, and I meant to cover that. But over time, segments of it will be put out as a competitive bidding for different pieces of the work. The select board views this as extremely strategic and important. And so we'll be discussing again on Monday. We had a discussion last Monday to confirm that at the moment, the select board is thinking these early stages of this planning is going to be worked through at the select board level, working with the town manager and staff directly, because we think we can be the most efficient. As these things begin to be spun up as projects, let's say there is a construction project for a public safety facility, that would of course have a, building committee, just like we've done with the school building committees and those kinds of things. And of course, that would obviously go out to bid as well.
Carlton, any questions? Lindsay?
Is your expectation that the 600,000 will fund all the next steps you listed for each of those segments, so public works, public safety, and municipal consolidation?
We're going to go as far as we can with it.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's likely to get us to order of magnitude costs and a time and a recommended set of phasing. I'm reluctant to use the word master plan again, because we're talking about an MCI master plan, and if we talk about how many master plans can you have, but I do compare it to, and I think it's a fair comparison to the master plan that the school department put out in the early 2000s, where we were going to build a new middle school on the Sanborn property, and then we were going to rebuild each of the elementary schools before we did the high school. So if you remember that master plan, it failed. Peggy's shaking her head, she was there.
He's on the board.
Yeah. And, but it was, the point is that the plan established what the needs were. In the end, the town took it in a slightly different direction. We ended up doing the 3 elementary schools, then we did the high school, and we've wrapped it up with the middle school, and that's just fine. But you've got to start someplace with a plan. I think this will get us to our first version of the plan. Whether that plan ultimately is exactly how this works out over the next 10 or 15 years, when we're talking about the MCI site, when we're talking about these public safety facilities, that's going to be, that'll remain to be seen, but we'll have a very good starting point with this money.
Don?
Mark, thanks for this. From the points you made during the presentation, it sounds like you already know what the plan is. You know that the preferred plan is to do public works, do a West Concord Fire Station, to do public works somewhere after we gain control of the site at MCI. That's where we'd like to do it. But spending money on that today doesn't make that site control any closer. That is still a long way off. And knowing what that cost is also doesn't bring that land under our control. So I would defer that until we have control of the site. We already know from prior studies how much space we approximately need. We don't need to know if it saves us money by using one of those buildings, because that's useless information if we don't gain control of the site. So, but we do know that we want that the West Concord Fire Station needs to be done, and that makes sense. And so we need to do a preliminary feasibility of putting it on that land package and how to gain control, the things you mentioned for that. And then lastly, the municipal offices, I like very much that you said that it could potentially free up capital for other purposes. And I think that that should certainly be explored and opportunistically. And I don't know that we have to spend $100,000 to gain that data, but we should spend what we need to gain the data to know what those parcels could be worth.
Sven, did you want to add something to?
Yeah, Sven Weber, 50 Belknap, co-chair of the Land Use Working Group on the public works piece. There is information needed for the negotiations with DCAM. So it's not that we can't just wait to get land. We have to build the argument which pieces of the land and how it is shaped. So we need, there are different scenarios how we can place public works in this. Some scenarios include something going within the wall. Others try to keep it outside the wall and just use a very narrow corridor to maximize the developable part of MCI. Because we have a significant interest to maximize, or also the state has an interest to maximize what can be developed versus what is taken for public use when public works comes. So there are design scenarios where you have to move the buildings. You can potentially use buildings that are already there or do it a little bit different, but you win room. So that's work where we have to put dollars behind. Right. And that helps negotiating to DCAM to say, okay, we are trying as town to give the state the most land possible for development.
So that's great. So our goal then is to define what we're asking for, Tim, to develop a schematic design that minimizes the amount of land necessary.
Right.
If we can make discrete objectives like that, I'll be all for it.
Yeah, and by taking advantage of that opportunity, we also gain the ability to look seriously at how does the Kais Road site then become available for future redevelopment itself. I just wanted to respond to something. You characterize it as knowing what the plan is. What we know is what the recommendations of the Land Use Working Group actually are. And what we're saying is, okay, if these are the recommendations from 7 months of intensive study on the town's facilities, and these look like the best options going forward, then those are the options that we should explore for feasibility. So I stated them clearly because, you know, as though each one is the exact one to go for, because what we have to do is assume that at the moment and then do the detailed work to figure out what actually works and what may not work. That was the point of my example about the school's master plan. The schools had a master plan. It was beautiful on paper. It was voted down, and the town decided to do something else, and we still, 20 years later, wound up with 5 fantastic schools. So, but you have to have a starting point. You have to have a plan, and then you have to decide, is that the plan that we're really going to execute? And those plans can't be developed without some resources to them. And my point about saying that $125,000 has been sitting on the books since 2014 to study where public works goes is a message that says, we don't ask for this money and just spend it because it's there. We ask for this money for these purposes that are anticipated. They're going to have to be done sometime in the future. What we do know is the construction cost of all of this is escalating all the time. And so we can, you know, believe me, the middle school that was going to be built in 2006 was not going to cost $100 million. That's for sure. So we made that choice as a community. And now we're going to be faced with a similar set of choices, and we're trying to make sure that the best possible information is available to make those choices. And that's what this article is about. Without this funding, this planning really doesn't get off the ground.
John?
So I think we're all clear that we need to do something and that we need process in place and we need to have the studies and have all that information. I think that no one's going to debate that. Last week, what gave me pause was that the 600,000, it was fairly clear, was very arbitrary, how that number came up. I think you even said, I think, quote, learning as we go, and it's justified because of it was a fraction of the overall cost. And then today, I feel like the numbers were just plugged to solve for the 600,000. So I don't doubt that you need money. I don't doubt that most of the people here agree with that. I wish that that number was refined with a little bit more thought, because 600,000 is a lot of money for the taxpayers. And based on prior studies, we could have said we need 5 engineering reports. They cost roughly this much. Maybe it's more than $600,000. Maybe it's less. This is a very arbitrary number. I really want to support you because I understand that we have to have this process, and DCAM we need all this information. I'm really struggling with this blank check approach to budgeting, and it's making me very conflicted because I don't think there's a lot of thought process behind the 600,000, but there is the knowledge that you need resources. So that's what's making me conflicted.
Anybody else in the room? Anybody online have any comments or questions? Suresh, I see you.
One comment to say, is it possible in the last slide where we say $600,000, and prior to that we referred to the 2014 $125,000 and the ARPA funding, can we show that as like a total amount would be more like 600 plus the 125 plus the ARPA funding, so that everybody's clear how much funding are we talking about here?
We had a version of that did try to identify what's been spent already. For the purpose of town meeting, we wanted to make it clear that we are asking for those other monies have already been appropriated. And the ARPA funding in particular was money which, of course, if we don't is the first money that we'll use, because if we don't use it by December 31st, it simply disappears. So that it struck us as being potentially confusing to start adding together numbers where some of the numbers have already been appropriated and are available and others are not. But I take the point, and it was something that we considered.
Anyone else online with any questions?
Kathy?
Oh, I'm sorry, Peg, go ahead.
Just,
Kathy?
Kathy or me? Kathy?
Yes. I have been the liaison to the land use working group, and so I've become quite involved in understanding all of these issues. It seems to me that we all know that we need to do more work to get a good plan. And we all know that this is something that's probably going to span the next 10 years. So would it be reasonable to support the warrant article and ask that we have, just as you did with the Beatty Center, ask for a mid-year report to have an annual or biannual look at the use of the funds?
I'm quite sure that the status of both the spending and the activities on this is going to be a subject that's going to be regularly discussed at the select board level. That's why when I answered Eric's question about governance, I was saying that the select board will in fact take the lead on working together with the town manager and her staff to manage these various work streams And we will be discussing, as part of our actually next meeting on Monday, one of the potential structures that we're looking at that's been proposed by a member, which involves the anticipation of a public safety building committee, the anticipation of a long-term capital planning group, as well as looking at how that eventually the connection between these two things is MCI, the public safety, the public works siting at MCI means that there's an intersection between the MCI master planning, which is separate from this, and this facilities planning, so one is enabled by the other. So those two things need to be brought together, and assuming that we're successful, and I think there's good reason to believe that we will be successful, because the status of the negotiations with the state over the future of MCI is important. We're going to be spending a lot of time on that in the next 6 months, getting a master plan for that site. That master plan for the site, if it's properly informed by what our public works needs will basically be the roadmap, the beginning of a roadmap for that. And all of those things will be part of the select board agendas, but certainly we would be happy to come back to the finance committee and report on how that's going as well.
Brian's hand is up, and Peggy, you had a comment, so let's take Brian first, and then we'll come back to the room. Brian, go ahead.
Thank you. I was wondering if you could clarify the timing of awarding these funds to the consultants and engineering, groups that would be doing the studies. Do you expect to award all, the majority or, 75% of the 600,000 in the next year? Or do you expect that this 600,000 will be spent over multiple years?
I think it'll take more than a year to spend it all. Procurement of this kind and this sort of planning takes time to even get set up. So if you recall, last year we voted to use $250,000 of free cash for MCI planning purposes. At that time, we didn't know whether we were going to have any money coming from the state. It turned out later and well after town meeting that we discovered that we did have an earmark, so that's been helpful. And so we've been able to hold some of that in reserve for the activity that we're doing. But the contract associated with that spending is signed this week. It's literally this week's news is that we were able to award a responsive, get the scope together, get to the point in time where it was right to do that, so that's a good 10 months after town meeting acted. So if that's any indication, we're acting now so that we have the resources to continue the planning effort, and it's quite likely that significant portions of this are not actually under contract until this time next year or so, and those contracts will extend past that time. So that's actually a feature too, because what we need to do is we need to bring this work and the MCI planning work together into an overall facilities plan. So we know that we're working on MCI, and we're looking at what is the steps as we refine that work. And there's a lot of moving parts.
Peggy?
I just want to thank you for doing this work, putting it all together. I've spent my entire career in engineering and environmental and planning contracting, and I think 600 is not too low and not too high. I think you'll end up with a lot more specific contracts as you go forward, but let's also remember that they can't issue contracts or RFPs until the money's allocated. So without that money in their pocket, they're hamstrung.
Yeah.
And they've made so much progress, and I think it's just one of the best programs that we've done, and better than the school plan. So I would move that we approve affirmative action on Article 12. Or did we already do that?
We didn't move it yet, so let me just, are we comfortable making that motion and then continuing the discussion afterward? I see two hands up, so let's continue the discussion a little longer.
Okay.
Lindsay, go ahead.
I just had a question, piggybacking off John's question. If you have another month till town meeting, is there an opportunity to sharpen our pencils here around these estimates and these buckets, and get a little bit sharper on what you expect to spend in each one of them, or just ballparks, or do we really just not at that point where we can do that?
There's certainly the opportunity for this to get further refined. As I said, we couldn't get out in front of the work that the land use working group, the land use working group, you know, Kathy can attest to this, has been working very hard. They deserve a lot of thanks for moving this along fairly quickly, quite quickly. And as with the efforts to plan MCI. So this is accelerated because of the opportunities. And it is going to continue to work. But as Peggy was just mentioning, the town is legally not allowed to even put an RFP on the street if we don't have the money to pay for what we anticipate the cost to be. So we essentially have two choices here. We can leave the money sitting in free cash without any purpose and basically not be able to go out to bid for information we may need or services we may want, or we can appropriate it in this way and then have that ability. We're not going to spend this money on things that we don't need to know and that need to be planned. So, and yes, the work will continue and the momentum is high. The land use working group is working on phase 2 at the moment, which we haven't talked about, but it is the beginning of the work on what are the reuses. And some of the money, I alluded to it, the ARPA funds are being used for this yield analysis, which is looking at some specific properties, but only the major ones. It doesn't answer the question of, you know, my favorite top one is the assessor's office, which you may be familiar with, at 21 Court Lane. It's a very small building. It occupies 5 people. It's one, you know, should be, even used to be here in the townhouse, but can't fit in here anymore. The yield analysis on that is work that needs to be done, and it's a professional service, and it won't cost very much money. It'll be a small contract, but it hasn't even been contemplated yet because we're still sorting the big rocks.
Okay, Don?
I have to say, this is complicated work, and you can certainly burn through 600,000 and reach no decisions if you don't have focused objectives, timelines, et cetera. Without issuing an RFP, you can create a timeline. You can say, this is what we're going to do, this is the milestone we're moving toward, and if we do this, then we can do that. So my question is, have you considered retaining the services of a program manager who does this for a living to come in, take all of this, organize the RFPs, manage the process, and you would give them the deadlines, say this is what we need to know, because that would bring some structure to it. Today, in fact, just mentioning just now that, well, maybe we're going to study also that the assessor's building makes me nervous, because we could spend the money and not get to a decision. But there are certain things we need to know to make a decision, to reach a decision. We don't need to spend things, we don't need to answer questions that don't inform that decision just now, right?
Right.
We need to move this ball down the field.
Yes.
And that is a methodical process. What's missing is the method here. So I would agree, 600,000. In fact, you already said you have 125,000 in ARPA funds for
the public works site.
But we haven't done an RFP, even though those funds were there. So I'm afraid, are we even going to do the RFP now? We don't know how. We don't have the skills to do it. But a program manager that's what they do for a living, and they could do that. So that would just be a question for the select board to consider. Thanks.
Eric has a question.
Lindsay, piggybacking on where I thought you were going, Lindsay, where my mind was going, we don't have to vote tonight. We
Right.
have another month. We could always defer action until town meeting. It sounds like there's an appetite for some additional details. I would certainly, it would help my thought process on this in terms of how the dollars break down and the timeline. I'd be interested in more detail on the timeline. We're getting there, but I'm still sort of struggling with this, partly because of the interim report that Sven provided back in February, which was great. He talked about the recommendations from the land use working group wrapping up in July. So we're almost there anyway. If we have another month of the working group's work, we have a month to get some additional details on how the 600,000 will break down, and another month to understand the big picture timeline. I don't think that jeopardizes things at all. It just gives us more time.
I'll answer after I hear what Paul wanted to say.
So the thing that I don't think we're talking about is what's the cost of not doing this, and the opportunity cost and the loss of that opportunity. I look at free cash as this is like the way that we have available funds to invest in bettering the town. We need information to do this. I don't think there's anybody in this room that doesn't think that we're going to eventually spend this money. So the question is, do we want to have information so that we can be available to like sit at the meetings and say, hey, let's negotiate under good faith because we have some information? Do we want to have a good path forward, knowing things that we don't know now? And I mean, yeah, it would be great to know exactly what, like, and a timeline would be, exactly what, like, some estimates are, but at a certain point, it kind of comes down to, do we think that this is a good investment for the town, or do we need that, extra information in order to make that choice? Personally, I think it's a good investment for the town.
Lois?
Do you want to speak before
do.
Sven? Okay.
I'm not sure that my decision is going to change now, anything between today or our next meeting, April 16th, the town meeting. I'm ready to vote.
Let's hear what Sven has to say.
Yes, Sven Weber again, 50 Bellen up. I think we know the three working blocks that need to be done. We know the town, it's not the first time the town has experience in issuing RFPs and what the cost of RFPs are. So they are all, if you look at what needs to be done, they are order of magnitudes and how much this thing cost. And I think, Peggy, you had the right comment. It's probably not enough, but also just not too much. Yeah. So it's somewhere in the right order of magnitude, and we can get lost here in the detail to know, okay, this step, this could be 15,000 or this could be 17,000. Yeah. The question here is this money the right order of magnitude to bring us forward another 18 to 24 months? And if you're not doing it now, we're stopping this for 12 months at least. And then we're at the same point where we were before. And a personal comment is we had the experience at other things, for example, the for the roads program, where the question was, how did we get there and why was things always postponed or kicked the can down the road? And I fear we're getting in exactly the same position here, that we're kicking the can down the road, well knowing that there's three major working streams that need to be addressed and need to be done. So that's just a comment from my side.
All right.
Quick comment.
No, I don't want to rush you, Gerard. I had something to say, but you go first.
I've just started working with the land use working group as their liaison. I've been to several meetings, and I'm being very, very impressed with the amount of detailed work that you've been doing. But it's also shown to me the complexity of the work, and when the town makes a decision, it's a multiple decision, so it's almost like a decision tree. If we do this here, if we do that there. So at this point, the amount of detail for the 600,000, I think, is appropriate, so that we give the select board the ability to get more detailed information so that it can see how all these projects fit together.
And I listened to everybody. This is a really interesting discussion. I particularly resonated, I think, with Gerard's comment and with Paul's. I've lived in this town for more than 30 years and paid attention to what was going on for most of that time. This is a unique moment. We have opportunities that didn't exist. I mean, the idea that there's this much land around in town that we can make decisions about. We really are facing an inflection point about what happens next in the town. And I agree that with Peggy, the order of magnitude here seems relevant to the project. I am very aware that the town can't make commitments ahead of appropriations. There will be facts moving on the ground, and we need to be, as a town, we need to be in a position to respond, and we need the select board to have the resources to be able to respond. Yeah, we could wait, defer this to town meeting, which doesn't always go smoothly, because it means all of us gathering before and considering things and scurrying to the back of the room during other discussions. Been there, done that. It doesn't always go smoothly. But I don't know what else we will find out. And I don't think there's anything that I'm likely to find out that's going to change my vote on this. So I want to make sure everyone's had a chance to talk and express themselves. Are people comfortable with calling for a vote on this now? Does somebody want to make a motion?
We have a motion on the floor by Peggy, and I will second her motion for affirmative
I
action.
withdrew it. I state the motion. I move affirmative action on Article 12.
And I'll second the motion.
Okay. Is there any further discussion on the motion, or can we go to a vote? Okay. All right, the clerk to call the roll.
This is the roll call on the motion for affirmative action on Article 12. Sarash Bhatia.
Yes.
Peggy Briggs.
Yes.
Brian Conway.
Yes.
Kathy Kukalo.
Yes.
Eric Dahlberg.
Yes.
John Garofalo.
No.
Pat Geyer.
Yes.
Gerard Jansen.
Yes.
Don Kupka.
Yes.
Lindsay Liss.
Yes.
Niranjana Nagarajan.
Yes.
Carlin Reed, yes. Paul Rodriguez.
Yes.
Lois Wassoff.
Yes.
Okay, Pat, double check me. I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 yes, 1 no, and 0 abstention. Is that what you have, Pat? That's correct. Yeah, the motion passes.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. That was a good discussion. That is the last item on our agenda for the evening. I'm not sure what action items we have, other than to finish the report.
Yeah.
Do you have something, Carlin?
Yes, Pat and I have been talking about how we take minutes, and we have some good news. Pat, you want to take it away?
I can do 2. I'll do 1 and you do 1.
Go for it. Go for it.
Okay. So I think all of you have a pretty good idea how onerous the job is of the minutes.
Yeah.
What we've been doing historically is getting that video, and literally I would transcribe it and Carlin would summarize it. Can't summarize it without a transcription. With the help of Eric and a few other tools, I've been playing with AI. And I've now developed some, shall I say, capability to get a very good transcription and summary. And it's gone a lot more smoothly, at least from my standpoint. Carlin always then re-examines it and Lois approves it. But now, and I'll pass it to Carlin, we actually have yet another development.
And that development is courtesy of the Finance Department's Ryan Svopa will be helping us do the initial draft of the transcription. And the process will be, Ryan will be doing that transcript, will be doing the first draft, and then passing it on to Pat. She'll go through it, and then send it to me, and I'll take a look at it against the video, then I'll send it to Lois. So we're adding another level, but I think it will actually make the process about 2.5 hours faster, frankly. Thank you very much, Jennifer and Ryan, for allowing us to do that.
One or two more times.
This is for
Then
going
it falls on somebody else's shoulders.
Pat, be nice to her. I want her to continue doing this, please. At least
Okay. Anyway, that's what I just want to let you know, that we're actually modernizing it somewhat. And thank you very much for allowing us to use staff again to help with the minutes.
Thank you. So I think we are done. So I don't think we need to do a motion to adjourn. I am going to declare the meeting closed at 8:40.